Today, I get a chance to speak to renowned Norwegian coach Olav Bu, coach of Gustav Iden and Kristian Blummenfelt. Or is he? Let's ask him. Olav Bu, thank you for joining us here on GTN. We're looking forward to speaking to you about everything. First question, we have to address the elephant in the room. Are you and Kristian Gustav splitting up?
No. I think this. I don't know where the whole thing have probably started, but I think what has been, let's say, communicated quite clearly for, I would say, almost years now, is that after this Olympics, basically, my background is from entrepreneurship. I like to really develop things, build things. That's my passion. And already after Tokyo, we were talking a little bit about, okay, we needed to find somebody to start take over, let's say, more of the logistics and these kind of things. But it ended up being another 2 more years. So then it was under Kona. And then after Kona, it was another 2 years. But now leading into this Olympics or this year, we were quite clear on that I wanted to pursue some new challenges. So over the last years, I've been actually a little bit into racing, America's Cup, actually having more dialogues with some pro cycling teams as well. And then, as you know, already this autumn, I started working with Uno X. So it's more like it gives itself away that following up Kristian and Gustav on the one side, where I've been traveling with them for almost 200 days a year, to also being now a part of a pro cycling team. I unfortunately don't have more than 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. So that it just means basically that the big shift is that, as we talked about for some while, is that they take now responsibility for the training, the logistics, and these kind of things on themselves. And over all these years, also we have had a lot of focus on building competence. So actually, a fun thing that we have been doing on since almost, I don't know, it must be 7-8 years, is that on every camp we've been on, we've gone through different topics. Okay, how does this work? How does this work? And where they also have to prepare presentations. And so it's almost a little bit like call it a symposium we created for ourselves, a summit that we created for ourselves. But where they now are taking more responsibility, or all responsibility for, let's say, making the plans for where they want to be, the training and these kind of things built on what we have done, and how they would like to progress. And then I'm taking more, I call it more of a mentor role, where we still will go into the labs and do testing and these kind of things, but I won't be traveling with them the same way I've done in the past. And so maybe that's where the rumors came from.
Rumors of you splitting up have been greatly exaggerated. You were just simply slightly changing the dynamic a little bit. That is about as exaggerated as it could possibly get. Okay, good to know. Obviously, I did want to ask you about the Uno X mobility and being a head coach of that. Obviously, we've seen there's a precedent to this. Dan Lorang coaches some of the best triathletes in the world, Taylor Knibb, Lucy Charles Barkley, and he also is the head coach of Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe. So he's already managing that. But of course, he's kind of always been a kind of hands-off coach, coaching from a distance, coaching over his laptop. And you've been a very hands-on coach. I mean, from the pictures, it looks like mostly hands-on people's ears, but a hands-on coach. So I assume that that's the thing that's going to have to change a little bit, that you're going to have to either have lieutenants doing the hands-on stuff, or, as you say, make Gustav and Kristian a little bit more self-reliant.
I think maybe even more. I think probably, without speaking for Dan, but I think he is actually more. He will be more hands-on with Kristian and Gustav. That's also why we've had quite a lot of focus on building competence. So they are today where I would say that they are to the point where our coach, if he's not able to go into the details of why a plan is the way it is and how it is individualized, they will very quickly start to undress that coach. And maybe they wouldn't speak up, but they would just say, okay, fine. It's a plan, but it's not really. So I think, but for Dan, I think he is more hands-on in that, let's say, that part of the process, and obviously much more skilled in that. I will actually have maybe now a more distant role in a more sense that they actually write the plans or not a little bit more. They write the plans, how they want to do the workouts and these kind of things, and then we sit down and we discuss and we go through a little bit here how they are going to build it up, and then we use testing as a way to see, okay, how are they responding to the workouts and how they build up, and they book their places, go to locations where they're training and these kind of things. Be part of groups that they would like to train with at different times of the year and so on. But obviously, I don't have more than 365 days a year, and I have to spend more time with my family, or I want to spend more time with my family than I've done before as well. So it is a natural shift in a way that they take more responsibility both for their training and planning, and then they do still the lactate measurements. They put it in so I can follow up and have a little bit of look of it, but more exactly being more a mentor and trying to hand over even a little bit more.
So they're actually going to write their own program. So I can make the title of this video interview, Kristian and Gustav now self-coached. Can I say that? You could. I'll say they are too. I would say that's a pretty fitting description. You could say in many ways, because they have to be. They are out in the field on their own, and this is a little bit again where it has been going, and then where we. Again, why it's been very important to spend a lot of time together with them and build competence, and then obviously this is a call. We know. We know, obviously, being, call it self-coached is something that can be very, very tough. But that's also exactly why this is an exciting, let's say, challenge as well moving forward, because they have pretty good competence and know what to do. They know how to analyze lactate numbers and these kind of things. It's just not a number, but they understand the context, which is really good. So I think it can be good. Yeah. So okay. We will continue to work together for a long time still. So it's just again. But you haven't quite trained your way out of a job just yet. They still need you to.
The goal would of course be if there is nothing that would make me more happy than if I really see that. I have my mentor that I had for 10, 15 years, Dr. Ørjan Madsen. I think without having, or I know he is quite proud of, let's say, the development I had to the point where he says, I can't really say this is right or wrong anymore because this is far beyond where I have been before. But he has the competence to really ask the good questions around it. And that's, of course, the goal with Kristian and Gustav as well, that they obviously moving forward with the demands and everything that are in the sports, and where they also try to take in a little bit more of their own thinking and these kind of things in there. Yeah, maybe they discover a lot of things that I can maybe someday learn from them as well. That would be fun.
Interesting. I assume then you still have some, as their mentor, as their advisor, you still have quite a lot of involvement then in the long-term planning, the season planning, that kind of thing. So you said previously in interviews that the energy systems for short course and long distance are so different. You're close to VO2 max for the short distance. You're way below that for long distance. We've seen Kristian twice now. After Tokyo, he immediately focused on Ironman and absolutely smashed it. And then after Paris, again, immediately focused on Ironman and absolutely smashed Frankfurt. But going the other direction, which everyone says is much more difficult and maybe impossible, and you obviously argued that absolutely no, it's not impossible. I can get Kristian back to Paris winning condition. That didn't work out perfectly, but you've already said that Los Angeles 2028 is possible. What needs to change? What have you learned from the Paris cycle that you can change for the Los Angeles cycle? Does he need to focus on the short distance for an extra year? Because it was about 18 months, wasn't it, from Kona through to Paris, that he did Kona 2022 and then Paris in August 2024. Does he need an extra year to shift that focus back? Does he just need to change the balance of what he did for that? Or is there actually a possibility that it is impossible to go the other direction? I
think one of the things looking back to, and I think we knew or we had a feeling of this already. I think basically the journey we've been through since 2016-17, basically going to the three first on the podium with Kristian, Gustav, and Kasper on the World Triathlon Series, and then going to 3 on the podium, and that was in Bahrain, and where all of them actually set a record. All of them basically came under the previous record for a 70.3. This was in 2018, I think. Or 19, and then obviously Olympics, winning the Olympics, or both test event where they basically Kasper came second, Gustav came fourth, Kristian crashed out, but we got Lausanne afterwards, where I don't remember exactly now the results in the grand final there, but it was also very good in general for all of them. And then the year after, when we won the Olympics, and then we took the grand final, but not only the grand final, but also the World Triathlon Championship Series. So the 3 top ones there. And then shifting very quickly to Cozumel, where I set the record, which is, I think, still is in the Guinness Book of Records. And then on to St. George, and then Kona, step 7, also there. I think this journey basically didn't give any room for breathing for anybody for all these years when we really pushed for this. So I would rather say that the biggest error that was made going back to the Olympics was that I think we maybe underestimated a little bit actually how tired we really were mentally from that, let's say from that quite exhaustive. And then also then in 2023, even though we were going back to the Olympics, we really didn't go fully back to the Olympics. So actually that year, Kristian won the PTO, or what's called T100 now, overall series. And I would say that we also were a little bit sloppy on intensity control and these kind of things. And it doesn't help really with a fantastic training program unless you also execute also at the same level on it too. And that I would say is that hindsight after Paris, what annoys me is more that but something that maybe we couldn't have done anything with either, because you are as tired as you are, and I think now is the first time they really have had a long off season. That's more than, I would say, they had more than one month off season now, which is historic, I would say, for Kristian and Gustav. So no, for LA, I think what is really needed for LA is exactly, you need to be motivated, but we know what it takes to get there. And also what can be different is that obviously what's changed from Tokyo to Paris is that Paris is a very different course from what Tokyo was. Swimming was very different, and biking also was very different as well. In Tokyo, you could get away with a larger gap on the swim. In Paris, this would cost much more because it's more of a TT course. You have very, very high average speed throughout the course, significantly higher average speed in Paris than in Tokyo. And what most people don't realize is that when you are sitting up at those high speeds already, if you're a lower average speed, bringing up your power, you get it back in speed. If you're at a high average speed, you can't bring up the power a little bit. You have to go up quite a large bit, and you don't get that for free. And
diminishing returns.
Yeah, and looking at Kristian's power output for the first 25K in Paris, it was 30% higher for 25K than it was when it was sitting in the front group, that even taking turns at the front of the group there. And you don't get those 30% for free. They have to come from somewhere, and that's gonna show up on the run for sure. So again, LA can be a completely different course again. So it might be that it becomes a little bit more like Tokyo again, so you can get away with a little bit more larger swim gap. Otherwise, that's also where a place where you need to balance a little bit more on the swimming side to build that up too. So LA, I'm confident one can go back from Ironman to Olympics, especially with the fundament that Kristian and Gustav have for sure.
Interesting, very interesting insight into the Paris race, and also what maybe went wrong. On your first point of them being more self-sufficient, more self-reliant, and self-coached, we'll say. I'm going to use that as my tag, so we better say it. You didn't travel to Kona.
And maybe just to be a little bit cautious on that, so we don't create again more rumors to the rumor on these kind of things again.
Because we want to get the clicks. We want to get the clicks. We're going to start the rumor.
because it is important for me. I think it is important for me to say that we have a really good relationship, and we will continue to have a relationship. It is just that I'm. Yeah. As we said before in podcast, even before the Olympics, that I would go over and start doing more other things as well. So it's more change in balance, to put it that way.
I think we understand the dynamic. So having said that, you want them to be more aligned. You sent them off to Kona. I believe it was out of your control. You couldn't travel because of illness or something, but they were essentially in Kona on their own this time. We'll forgive Gustav's result because he really didn't have a good run-in to that event at all. But are you frustrated / disappointed with Kristian's result? And maybe more importantly, could that result have been different if you were on the island, do you think?
Again, it's just become speculations, really.
Of course.
And I think it's always easy after this kind of event, when things doesn't turn out the way they should, that one starts to overanalyze and so on. But I think looking at the bigger picture, I think maybe the one thing that stuck the most with me that maybe is not Kona is a hot place, and you need to be, and because of that, it's important to prepare for it. One of the things that Kristian actually said 1 week before the race, because we had 2 monster races, as we did also in Kona in 2022, was that he didn't really feel the heat, and not compared to what he felt in 2022. 2022, he felt the heat even more, which brought him to a 3rd place. This year, 1 week before, he didn't feel the heat when they were out doing the racing, much in the same way Gustav did in 2022. He didn't feel the heat the same way there. Kristian felt a little bit more, but this year, Kristian actually said before, "No, this feels much better already than it was in 2022." So we knew that he was very well heat adapted. But one thing that, if I were to take away one thing as my major, again, there are so many things that is really difficult to say. Of course, it's been talked about whether he's taking too much carbs or whether it was aerodynamics and these kind of things. But then again, we know Kristian on the one side is very robust to changes on the bike. If you knew how big changes he had been doing on his bike, even in training in periods, it really doesn't affect him a lot at all. Rather to the opposite, where he likes to have a little bit changes on his bike, exactly because it allows him to target his muscles a little bit differently. But then also on the other side as well, carbs, I would say that taking 150, 160 grams per hour for him in a race is something he's done multiple times before. One issue that we have known for a long time that he have had, and which really started to become more pronounced during St. George in 2022, was that he has an irritation in his throat, which is causing him to, especially during more harder ventilation, starting to cause so much irritation that he gets this vomiting reflexes. So it has nothing to do with, but yeah, pure vomiting reflexes because of the irritation that is there. Basically you take 2 fingers and put it down, everybody gets a reflex, but he gets this automatically. We have one of the best doctors in the world that has been working on this, and where they're using camera equipment and other things and going down during stress testing to see and figure out what it really is. We are not there yet. But the single most important thing I think I would probably take away from Kona, but which you really is hard to control. You can try to limit it, but he basically had 2 days before, where the 2 days before the race and the day before the race, he started actually to not because of the throat, but for other reasons. He started vomiting actually 2 days before the race. He started vomiting the day before the race. And actually one thing that most people don't realize is that this is maybe not so noticeable on race performance in more normal conditions. But in warm conditions, this can be quite critical, because what happens when you start emptying your stomach and other places also, because for any reason is that you also will start to lose plasma. So all the plasma that you maybe have spent weeks building up, you can lose that in matter of a day, or let's say a couple of days, and that you can't go into a race with. So the vomiting that he had on the bike, this is something that it's really hard to say, but it's probably whether it's the same thing that it was the day before, 2 days before the race. Difficult to say, but at least you can't lose plasma, you can't lose body fluids going into a race, which is when it is in this warm condition, especially not when it's an Ironman race. That's bad. So again, it just becomes speculations and so on, but it's more. Sometimes things are out of your control. I think the race turned out very differently for a lot of athletes this year compared to what it has done in the past, or let's say even last year, for who was the favorites, who one thought would be. And what's super motivating from the race is to see Patrick Lang, 38 years old, crushing it, really just believing in his own pacing, doesn't get stressed about the young guys going in the front and opening up a massive gap, because I think it can be very easy at that time to be just, oh, my race is done, they are so far ahead. But where you start to see that he doesn't lose his head, he stays to the plan, delivers perfectly, believes in his capability, and just clocks it in the end there. And I think it just shows how that you can definitely, you're not at your peak necessarily when you're 30 or 25. This is a race, if you believe in yourself and train well, you can stay there for 38 years, maybe 40, who knows, maybe somebody will win Kona as a 41-year-old. We say,
maybe. Well, if anyone can,
30.
I think I'm not sure there's a race in the world that rewards confidence and experience more than Kona. So I think definitely it does suit the older guys who are self-confident and also have a bit of experience in racing this stuff. Now, you've obviously the Norwegian method. Everyone's heard the Norwegian method. We've spoken about the Norwegian method endlessly. It's been the triathlon buzzword for the last few years. But there's also the Norwegian heat training method, which you guys have worked with, part of Centaura Tech, also part of the core temperature sensors. What is? I mean, we can go Google the Norwegian heat training method. I think Core have actually published a complete thing for age groupers that they can follow along. But what is the Norwegian heat training method? What can you sum it up for us in a couple of sentences? What is unique about it? Because heat is something that's been used for decades to further performance, and obviously everyone knows if they're racing in a hot environment, they need to experience that before they get there to try and adapt to it. That you can adapt to it, etc. But what is the Norwegian heat training method?
I was important for me to say that I think that we very little actually end up using the word Norwegian method or Norwegian heat training method ourselves. It's basically the Norwegian method. I think the reason for why we ended up dubbing the podcast the Norwegian method was just because there were so many other people that say, it's a Norwegian method, it's a Norwegian method. So we said, okay, let's
get the truth out there. Yeah.
But going to the heat training. Basically, what you can think, how we approach this is that heat is actually very much in the same way as capacity. It's a function of how high the heat production is, but also for how long is the duration you do it as well. Yeah. So you can go very high intensity, but if you look at a high intensity session, like a VO2 max session, for example, and you look at the kilojoules you do during that session there, it actually is less than you normally do on your LT2 session. So your LT2 session, you do much more kilojoule at a high rate than what you do at VO2 max. And it still is in a very, also measured in kilojoule hours, it's not too much of a difference between, let's say, there, because it's still high intensity. Okay. And now, this is of course where it is in the same way that you can just say, okay, we need to increase power over time. Well, that's good because you have a power meter, but that's the same thing also why it's very useful then to have a temperature sensor also like the Core, where you can track, okay, how much temperature am I building now? But then also you see that the volume of heat you're building over time also increases too.
Fascinating. Yeah. I've got a couple more questions for you. So quick answers. Firstly, a cynical question, maybe. I don't think a day goes by where I don't see an image of you and Kristian or you and Gustav in a lab doing the science. But you've also said that a lot of your coaching is subjective. It's asking the athletes how they feel and changing the training based on how they feel and asking them how they felt in a session when they were performing a certain level. They say the coaching is 50% science, 50% art. And you guys have clearly lent into the science side of things. Cynically, is that to gain an advantage over your competitors? Because anyone can do the art really and believe in their program, but not everyone has got a lab that they can use every day. Are you creating a psychological bit of warfare here where you go, you guys can't possibly do what I do because you don't have Olav Bu in your corner, so therefore I've already got an advantage before we start the race? Or is that too cynical?
No, you see straight through us. That was actually the whole idea from the beginning.
I got you.
No, I think actually the psychological part of it actually have never been a part of our thing. I think it's more something about which people have started maybe to think or talk a little bit more about a little bit later on and made it a little bit our thing. For us, it's more where we have said more like, okay, if people want to believe that, let them believe that. Because again, this is about being 100% focused on your target. And you can say that it's a little bit of a mental game on the one side, but on the other side also, if you start to make the mental game a too big part of your, let's say, the thing you do, you lose focus on what matters. And what matters is really making sure that you get the best out of your athletes. And getting the best out of your athletes requires trying to get as much as possible understanding of how to respond to the training. Give you a very, very simple example. If you have you probably have a watch, a Garmin watch or something like this that you're wearing.
Watch, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that one thing that is there, if I ask you now, from exactly now, so if you didn't have any watch in front of you, I ask you exactly now, I want you to tell me exactly when there has been gone 1 minute, when there's been like 5 minutes, when there's been 10 minutes, whatever, something like that. The thing is that 1 minute you will probably be fairly good at saying, 5 minutes maybe not so good, 10 minutes or in longer duration starting to get less precise. The reason for that is because we all have a very good feeling from intervals and other things what time really is. We use it so much in our training that we develop a sense of feeling for it. The whole point with instruments, and the same also with the watcher, if you take away the watch, so you have no clue about time anymore, you don't know what 60 seconds more is, or 5 minutes anymore, you will start to see that you get worse and worse and worse at predicting what the time is. You get less precise on what it really is. So again, the science part of it here really, and doing this measurement has nothing more to do with trying exactly to develop a more conscious feeling with exactly what is going on here. What do I feel here now? What do I do with this? In the same way that if you feel sick, you go to the doctor. Yeah, you feel sick. Okay, I can say that I feel sick. So how do you feel? I feel sick. Okay. But when you do let's say you do some tests and all the things like that, the doctor can say to you, okay, this is actually what you're feeling here. This is what is there. So you increase the preciseness of your language and your communications and so on. So measurements should never replace feeling or become where you become a robot and you start chasing numbers. It should be rather the opposite way around. It is where you use it to calibrate your feelings so you get more precise in your feeling what is happening here now so that you can make quicker, swifter, and more precise decisions both in a race but also in the training. But you can't expect to deliver on something in a race that you haven't practiced in your training. Racing is purely actually just a reflection of your training. So again, going to the lab, doing all these kind of measurements is purely a way of increasing, let's say, the knowledge or awareness around what we do, how we feel, so we can connect a feeling when it's like, oh, this is a feeling, but then you know, okay, this is not a dangerous feeling. I can do this because I've done this before and I know this is what's going on there. So you know also better what to do with that feeling, for example, or how to evaluate it.
Yeah, I understand, but you should probably use it as a bit of a warfare too, because I think it's a big advantage you have over the competitors. On that front then, you obviously touched a little bit onto it, on the psychology of your athletes and the psychology of how they can listen to their body and how they actually feel within themselves. So do your athletes see a psychologist? Do you use sports psychologists? Do Kristian and Gustav need sports psychologists, or do they just have after years and years of being pro athletes, they obviously get the gist of it, but how valuable is a sports psychologist and do they use one?
No, not regularly. I think our approach to sports psychology is the same very, very much as sports medicine. You go to a doctor for a regular checkup now and then, but that's more than for the blood works or things like that, just to see that your iron levels or vitamin D levels or other things are in where they should be, especially when you go to altitude. But other than that, we don't use a doctor beyond that. So, for example, now with Kristian, it's basically where we use a doctor to assess his throat. Also, the same thing with sports psychology. It is basically where I would say that I rather want to develop good communication in a team. And then normally the communication there acts as a way of, let's say, ventilation, where you can ventilate and discuss and talk. But then sometimes you do need somebody to let's say, talk with more about, let's say, you have more psychological challenges, which is then, let's say, outside of what you can do or should do as a team, and that's when you could use a psychologist. So they have used psychologists, or I would say, without that. I think that's a big surprise. But for example, now when Gustav lost his mother, we have a sports psychologist in the team, which he had done some conversations with and so on in that process. But yeah, no, we treat it very much the same way as we do with sports medicine. I think all teams, all athletes, when you stay together for a very, very long time, obviously there can be frictions and other things occurring. And then if you have good communications, it's easier to address it, which can prolong the relationship much longer. But obviously in some other situations, then probably it makes more advisable to use more of a sports psychologist or psychologist in it. So it's, again, a little bit based on the bond.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting insight. Well, thank you very much, Olav Bu. We really appreciate you taking the time. We'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you, James.
Well, that was a very fascinating interview. Officially, Kristian Blummenfelt and Gustav Iden are self-coached with Olav Bu just as an advisor. Okay, yeah, he didn't actually say that, but he almost said that, right? Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this interview. We'll try and get another one with him soon. Hit the thumbs up button if you have enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe so when we do get the next scoop from Olav Bu, you see it first. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.